Century Riverside 12. Still in action here in downtown Reno. The first job I ever had was at that theater in 2001. And certainly remember enjoying the free movies part of it. Watching Enemy at the Gates and Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and Hannibal, and Fast and Furious, the original, all came out that year. Didn't pay for any of them. Anyway, checking in to open up this vlog. As you can see from downtown Reno, I had a chance to do a follow-up on a story called Reno Works, transitioning homeless people to, well, not being homeless, getting them jobs, getting them off the streets. Really one of the stories that I've covered pretty extensively throughout the last several years, and one of the ones I really enjoyed doing. Anyway, in terms of the vlog, one of my worst nightmares took place recently at the Peppermill when one of the dealers came up to me and said, "They're all watching your vlog over on table 4. I think I partially have this guy Patrick to thank for this. I did not want the people at the Peppermill to know about the vlog. I wanted everyone outside of the Peppermill to know about the vlog, but not the people that I'm actually playing with. But I guess the cat's kind of out of the bag on that one. But I do appreciate those of you that live here and do play there that watch it. And so far I haven't heard anyone complain about it, so that's a good thing. I even had one of the guys that I played a big hand against come and ask me where he can see the video of the hand. So I guess that's kind of cool. I head over to the Peppermill for a 1 o'clock start on a Thursday. The first interesting hand comes when there's a $10 straddle on the button. I raise it to 40 in early position with pocket jacks. The button makes the call, as does the small blind. So with 120 in the pot, the flop comes Queen, Jack, 7, Rainbow. The small blind checks, and I bet half the pot of $60. The button, who I'm expecting to call me pretty lightly, folds, but the small blind, who I'm not expecting to call very lightly, does make the call. The turn comes the 10 of hearts, bringing in backdoor hearts. The small blind checks, and I think I have a pretty clear-cut value bet here still. I make it 85. Then it gets really bizarre, as the small blind check shoves all in for $360. Definitely a tough spot here with middle set. There are obviously some straights that they can have here, but I also think there are some weaker hands they might do this with, like pocket 7s or Queen Jack. And I didn't know the player, so I wasn't really sure what they were capable of. I thought about it for a few minutes and ultimately decided to make the call, especially because I'd already seen several sets flopped on me and slow played in this game. I also knew that I had outs against a straight should they have it, so I made the call. The river came a 4, and of course, small blind shows ace-king. 5 minutes later, in typical fashion, this was the scene. It was then pointed out that I lead the world in people doubling up through me and hitting and running within a 10-minute time frame. Shortly after that, the low jack raises to 20, and the hijack makes the call, as does the button. And I'm in the big blind with ace-queen offsuit. Definitely a spot where I would occasionally just call as well, but in this case, I figured this is going to be the best hand a lot of the time, but I'd like to just take the pot down pre-flop if possible, so I squeeze to $115. The original raiser in the low jack was the one I was actually most worried about, and he folds pretty quickly. The hijack is a local pro, and really I think Reno's best player, but a very loose, aggressive player at the same time. He decides to make the call. The button calls also, leaving himself only $125 behind, which was somewhat interesting. The flop comes ace, 8, 5 with 2 clubs. I thought about betting, but I decided to check and see what develops. The hijack bets 175. That's this pro that I'm talking about. And the button, with only a little bit of money behind, decides to fold. I'm never folding here, so I make the call, hoping for a safe turn card because with only about 700 left, I'm expecting to face a lot of heat on the turn, and I was planning on calling off on a lot of turn cards. The turn comes the deuce of spades. I check, and just as I expected, he puts me all in. This was one of those cards that I was certainly planning on calling off on. I didn't want to see a 4 or a 9 to complete some straight draws, and obviously I didn't want to see a club to complete front door clubs. Yes, there are certainly some hands that he could have that beat me already, but honestly I didn't think there were that many of those. I think I'm ahead the vast majority of the time here, and it's just a matter of holding up. So I decided to make the call. We quickly agreed to run it twice. He announces that he has a pair and a straight flush draw, which was good news to a degree, but obviously not great news. He shows deuce 4 of clubs. So when we run it twice, the first board comes out the 8 of clubs. And the second board comes out the 9 of clubs. So he scoops me in a massive pot, and I felt it after only several hours of play. I considered rebuying, but decided against it. I definitely wondered why a professional poker player would call that pre-flop raise with deuce 4, and I decided that it must be one of two reasons. Either A, he has the psychic ability to see into the future and know what cards will come, or B, he thinks I'm a big enough sucker that he can get away with it.
And for the first time in their history, the St. Louis Blues are the Stanley Cup champions.
Just getting a chance to see how the NHL season came to an end. The St. Louis Blues knocking off the Boston Bruins in 7 games. And I am still a little bit bitter about the way my Golden Knights got, I think, screwed out of their playoff series in the first round, and I think they easily could have been here in this series had they advanced. But I'm really happy for the Blues and their fans, because I'm always the guy, I always will root for the team who has never won if my team's out of it, generally the way I do it. So I was adamantly rooting against the Bruins because Boston already won the World Series and the Super Bowl. They don't deserve 3 in 1 year, it's just too much. And the Blues had never won the Cup. So I'm happy for those fans who have been rooting all those decades and finally get to enjoy it, winning a Game 7 after blowing Game 6 at home. A lot of people counted them out, but they had a great showing there in Boston tonight. I go back the next day looking to turn it around, and turn it around. I did. I started the day off making a 10 high flush against a 5 high flush to be up around $400 right out of the gate. A little bit after that, I pick up ace 3 of spades under the gun +1 over an under the gun limp. I raise it to 20, and under the gun +2 makes the call, as does the big blind. The initial limper makes the call as well. So with 80 in the pot, the flop comes ace queen 3 rainbow, giving me top and bottom pair. It gets checked to me, and I figure with no draws, I might as well bet big, knowing only real hands that are going to call me here are other aces. So I might as well try to get as much money in as I can. I bet 60. The first 2 players fold, and then the under the gun limper, the tightest player in the game, makes the call. With 200 in the pot, the turn comes a 6, and he checks once again. I figure by the same logic, I might as well continue to bet and hope that he calls me with a big ace here. I make it 120, but he makes the fold. Next hand, we agree to do a 6-handed bomb pot. Bomb pots are something that started in Reno. They typically don't happen in this game. They happen in the big 5-10 game, which runs in the back, that I typically don't play in because it's all pros most of the time. But in this case, a lot of those pros are in Vegas for the series, so a lot of them are playing in this game. So we spread this one with a bomb pot, and everyone put in $25 before the flop, and then we go directly to the flop with no pre-flop action. I pick up the Jack-9 offsuit, and the flop doesn't hit me at all. It comes ace 3-4 with 2 clubs. I'm not planning on donating a dime to this pot, but it gets checked to me in late position. I fire $75 as a stone-cold bluff, and, surprisingly enough, everybody folds. So we pick up a $150 pot without a lot of effort. There's a $10 straddle on, and under the gun plus 1 makes that call. I'm under the gun plus 2 with pocket queens. I make it $45, and the button makes the call. The big blind and under the gun call as well. So with $180 in the pot, the flop comes out 6, 7, 10 with 2 diamonds. Before I can do anything, the big blind, very aggressive player, leads out for 135. I'm definitely not folding to that. I could even raise here, but I decide to just call. Then the hand gets really interesting when the button makes it 400. The initial better on the big blind quickly folds, making it fairly clear that he probably folded a 10 and was betting out with it. I was unsure about what to do. The player that made this raise had been running extremely good and was up a lot on the day. I figured it was unlikely he wanted to jeopardize his win in this spot. He was also a player that at the time I didn't know anything about, so I made the fold. But me not knowing anything about him would change, and would change quickly. We get a $10 straddle on the button, and the low jack raises to 60. The straddle folds, and I look down at 2 aces in the big blind. I raise to 160, expecting it to get called the vast majority of the time here by the guy who had just raised. He thinks about it for about 5 seconds and indeed makes the call. So at $330 in the pot, the flop comes out Queen 7-5 rainbow, and I decide to get tricky. Rather than bet, I check, hoping for a bet out of him. Now one does not come immediately as he checks back the flop. The turn comes an 8. Now I decide to bet out for, I believe, $130. And without 1 second of hesitation, he snap raises to 450. Wasn't sure what to make of the speed of that raise, but between the time I laid down those pocket queens to him and now, I'd seen several bluffs and he'd been playing a lot of hands, so I figured there's a good chance that he wanted to make a move on me at some point. I call the 450. So with $1,230 in the pot, we go to a river, which I consider to be a great card for me. It came a 7. Now I beat a lot of turn value hands he could have, certainly Queen 8, and a lot of his straight draws that he could be semi-bluffing with didn't get there. So I check, and he instantly, again, bets $650. So I'm getting a pretty good price on a call here, but the fact that I have aces is somewhat irrelevant. All they really are is a bluff catcher. He's representing either a full house, a straight, or really complete air here, if you ask me. And again, a player I don't know all that well, but definitely felt like he'd be wanting to make a move. I make the call, and he says, good call. He does not want to show his hand. He says he had pocket 4s, but didn't show it, so I'm not even sure that that was true. And I take down a $2,480 pot. Game got even better later on that night, but ultimately I decided to rack up and book a win of $2,500, making it a profitable weekend for me despite a $1,600 loss on Thursday.